On Reed Cleaners, Cook's Garage, Article 21 from the 2019 town meeting, and also the 7 and 23 Rotary plans. Chief Walsh is here to update you on speed enforcement, on pedestrian safety, and also welcome a new member to our police department. Sue Carmel's here to update everyone on marijuana revenue, and Sean will talk briefly about the Lake Mansfield Road project, our bridges, Ramsdale access, West and East Sheffield Road culverts, and he'll go into a little more depth on the upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant. So I'll get started here and then invite the rest of our team up to follow. Residential foreclosed properties, I just wanted to update everyone and let you know that we currently have 5 parcels of land and 3 residential properties in our possession. Karen Fink, our treasurer collector, will be here for a more in-depth conversation at our December 9th meeting. We'll seek guidance at that time from the board on how you'd like to move forward with those properties, whether you want to auction them off or do a residential RFP for one or more of those properties. So more soon on that topic. The fairgrounds and horse racing topic, we've been in regular contact with Senator Hines and Representative Pignatelli. We're in the process now of seeking clarification on a number of questions related to horse racing from our attorney, and it will take some time. Just bear with me. I am trying to get more information, but it's a very complex matter with a great deal of history, and it is taking more time than I anticipated. We did receive a petition on October 31st, a citizen petition on a home rule, an article for a home rule petition, and that included 278 signatures that were certified by our town clerk, and we plan to set a date for that special town meeting tonight. The Monument Mountain High School entrance, in response to a recent accident, I think it was roughly 2-3 weeks ago now, we met with Senator Hines, Representative Pignatelli, Dr. Dillon, and Sergeant Storty from our police department, and also Vice Chair Ed Abrams was present. We're in the process now of developing an alternate drop-off pattern for parents, dropping off children in the morning, and we'll continue to work together in hopes of announcing something soon. So stay tuned on that. We'll circle back to that topic. And real quickly, the water bottle ban and the winter parking ban. The water bottle ban went into effect on full effect on November 1st, and the last 3 of the filling stations is being installed this week, and that's at the Mason Library. The winter parking ban, just a quick reminder to everyone that it is now in effect through March 30th. Overnight on-street parking is prohibited between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., and vehicles blocking snow operations will be towed at the owner's expense. So, Chris, do you want to take the first? So Chris Rumble is going to take the next series of topics.
Good evening. So there were a number of items the board wanted an update about. Number one is the Mass DOT planned intersection improvements at 7 and 23 by the police station. So as many of you know from the previous public hearing that DOT held earlier this year, they are planning a roundabout there. So they would eliminate the signal and put a roundabout in its place. They have progressed to 100% design plans and estimates, and those are at DOT and under review now. If everything goes as planned, their schedule is anticipated to finalize those plans and specifications over the next few months and then bid the project in 2020. So they hope to get a contractor on board in 2020 and begin construction in 2021. Zoning. So as many of you know, last town meeting, May 2019, Article 21 failed in part and passed in part, and there was some confusion over what occurred and what happened with the subsequent Attorney General review of that. Parts 1 through 5 of Article 21 didn't pass. These consisted of some housekeeping items as well as some regulations regarding accessory dwelling units. The planning board will be proposing these items 1 through 5 of Article 21, again in May 2020. Part 6 of Article 21 did not pass. That dealt with how many housing units could be built in a mixed-use project based on how big the property is. This passed town meeting, but the Attorney General disapproved it based on some deficiencies in the amendment process. The Planning Board has not yet determined if it will take this article up again. The Planning Board meets again tomorrow night, so we'll see what happens there. So there are 2 town-owned properties that the town, after the owners went into tax arrears, the town eventually foreclosed on in land court, and the town is now the owner of last resort. And that's Cook's Garage and Reed Cleaners, both contaminated. Cook's Garage, the town owns this and is using part of our 2018 Brownfields Assessment Grant to study this. We've completed phase 1 and phase 2 studies there, as well as a hazardous building material survey. In the next few months, by the way, we suspected some underground fuel tanks. We didn't find any, so that's the good news. The next step for Cook's is that we'll be preparing some recommendations for how to remediate the site, and then we'll be doing some community outreach to discuss possible reuse scenarios. So that's over the next 12 months, that process. In terms of Reed Cleaners, obviously the town owns this as well. We're using that Brownfields grant here also. The primary concerns are the dry cleaning fluids that are essentially in the soil out back and continue to leach into the groundwater. So we've completed phase 1 and phase 2 studies there, as well as the hazardous building materials survey, so we know what's going on and where the contamination is going and how bad it is. The next step is to prepare some recommendations for how to clean this up. In the meantime, we are going to apply in early December for an EPA Brownfields cleanup grant for Reed Cleaners. As part of that application, we will hold a community meeting on Monday, November 25th at Town Hall. I think it's tentatively scheduled for 6, but watch for the newspaper advertisement on that. So November 25th, and that'll be a community meeting. Our consultants will be here to discuss a proposed cleanup plan for Reed Cleaners and to take any comments for that. And hopefully we'll get the grant.
Chief Walsh?
We'll introduce Elias first, and it's okay. This one here? Okay, as you may or may not know, the police department is currently, we have 3 vacancies, and actually another officer out on a long-term injured on duty status. He was struck by a vehicle a couple months ago. You probably read in the paper. So we're actually down 4 officers and a department with 17 full-time people. 4 is a lot, you know. So we've been shorthanded for a while now, waiting for the civil service list to come out, and which it finally did. So we're slowly trying to build up and fill these 3 vacancies. Hopefully get Officer Shimon back at some point from his injuries. And tonight we thought we'd just introduce one of those officers, Elias Casey. Elias, he's been with the department for about 2 years as a part-time reserve police officer. He's a native of West Stockbridge. He's 27 years old, and again, he's been with us about 2 years and done a fine job for us. And the town manager appointed him full-time on October 18th. Hopefully we can get him to the Nexa Police Academy in January with the other 2 candidates. And the reason we're introducing Elias tonight is because Elias is working part-time already. We were able to get a waiver from the training council so he can start working full-time right now in advance of the academy in January. The other 2 candidates, I can't start them until they actually graduate in the springtime. So we thought we'd bring Elias in tonight and introduce him. He's 7-year member of the fire department. He's with the fire department for 70 years. He's very community oriented and volunteer orientated, and I was very pleased to be able to select him off the civil service list, as well as with the other 2 candidates. They're all local young people, and I know Mark and I were really pleased to be able to get them. We think they'll be part of the building blocks of the, for the police department and part of our foundation, hopefully for many years to come. When the other 2 candidates graduate from the academy in the springtime, we'll bring them all back and introduce them again. But tonight, I just wanted to introduce Elias Casey to everybody. The second thing I wanted to do tonight was update the board and the community in terms of traffic enforcement. As you probably recall, about a month or so ago, I came in a meeting and gave an initial plan for traffic enforcement and pedestrian safety, and that came in response to many complaints we'd had about traffic enforcement and people speeding and that sort of thing in town. So we heard those complaints. I came about a month ago and did an initial presentation to the board and the community with a plan. And tonight, I was just asked to come back and do a quick update to everybody 1 month into it. I know we've got a lot on the agenda tonight, so I'll just go right through this pretty quickly. I did pass out some handouts to the board just because I think it's important that you have something visual to look at, to see that, we are doing a lot on here. We have focused on it for the past month, and there's a lot of parts to it. So I want to give you just a couple of handouts you can, take and read at your leisure, just to see exactly what we're doing. The stats I'm going to read in a moment are from a 1 month period of time, from the first week in October to the first week in November. I was going to give this presentation at the last meeting when we got snowed out. So basically, it's a 1 month period of time when we started this traffic enforcement program that I announced at the meeting a couple weeks ago, up until first week in November. And in that time period, officers have run 516 1/2-hour blocks of radar. That's 516 1/2-hour blocks of radar. They've issued 108 citations. And what I would ask, just remind the board and everybody, is that when I say 1/2-hour blocks of radar, is a pretty big number for us, because at any given time, there's only 2 officers on the road, okay? At any given time, all 3 shifts, there's 2 cruisers out there. And in between, answering calls, walking the street, which we try to do, doing our community policing programs, visiting schools and all that sort of thing, we've really ramped up our radar patrols in response to these complaints we've been receiving. So the officers aren't doing, they're not running calls or doing some of these other program issues. They've pretty much been told you're running radar. And we hope the community is seeing us out there, especially in some of the more, problematic areas where we had complaints. We hope you see us out there at the side of the road, trying to, for speeding, as well as monitoring stop signs, the crosswalks on Main Street. The number of citations are up, and we are devoting quite a bit amount of time to issuing these dealing with these enforcement issues. So 516 half-hour blocks is quite a bit. And the first handout I gave you quickly was that it's a sample of our daily log, okay? And that's just how we log this activity. It's all kept on our daily log, which is a public record, anybody can see. And that's just one quick piece of it, how we log it in for the board to to look at. In fact, that's from last night's midnight shift, and obviously all 3 shifts do the same thing. So it starts with daily log, and that's kind of how we collect the data that I just read off to you. The second handout I gave you, which is it's just a copy of our traffic complaints. At the meeting a couple weeks ago, I announced that we developed a new traffic complaint form, which is on our website, the police department website. It's easy to find and access, and we encourage people to use it. If you have a complaint, if you want to see us running speed, at a neighborhood, on a street, at a certain intersection, but it's also, if you have stop signs or any other issues that you'd like us to be out there doing, please, access the traffic complaint forms on our website. When I announced that a few weeks ago, people really started using them, and they've been coming in quite a bit. Some people send them in 3, 4, 5 times to me. No, that's fine. That's what they're there for. So, fill those out, get them into me, and we do address them. I do follow up with every complaint I get, let people know what we've done. Some people just request a speed trailer, and we take care of that, and I get back to every single complaint, letting people know how we followed up on it. We made a kind of a push at the meeting a few weeks ago about simple things like cutting back brush and vines and things like that, and tree limbs from a lot of our signs throughout the street, throughout the town, because that was another complaint we'd had. A lot of the speed signs or stop signs or whatnot, they'd been covered over by trees and brush and vines, and I offered a few weeks ago that if you fill out the traffic complaint form, send it in to me, we'll pass it on to Sean Van Duzen, and the highway department's been great about going out and just cutting back brush along some of the signs. So the second handout to the board was just what those traffic complaint forms look like. I attached an example of what an average complaint looks like for people. And finally, the form that we use to track the data. We also, which I announced a few weeks ago, started a special traffic enforcement unit. We have 4 or 5 officers that are dedicated just to go out and, target these areas that we get complaints on, okay? Again, I want to be clear that all officers are doing these radar blocks I talked about a minute ago. Well, we started a special traffic enforcement unit of 5 officers to really go out and work together as a team to monitor, crosswalk violations, downtown stop signs, speeding, and things like that. And they're working as a team, and as I said at the first meeting, they're using unmarked cars and handheld radar and everything else at their disposal. We're taking these complaints seriously, and we have been cracking down, and along with citations, we give out a lot more verbal warnings than we are citations. The intent here is to just spread the word that people were upset with the lack of enforcement. So we're stepping it up. People have to slow down. They have to stop the stop signs. You have to stop at red lights. You have to stop the red light in front of the police station. And for pedestrians and crosswalks, which was a big one too. Okay. And the final handout I gave the board was simply the spreadsheet that we use to track the, when we get complaints about brush and etc. tree limbs coming over a sign. I just came up with a simple spreadsheet that we forward to Mr. Van Duzen, his guys that go out and again, so we keep track of that. So I gave you a sample of what that looks like. I think the final thing to tell you is that through actually the hard work of Kara Becker, our administrative assistant, we've written a grant from a state grant for a highway safety grant for the amount of $10,000, which we've applied for. We're fairly optimistic that we'll get it. We should hear from it in about another week or two, and again, will be $10,000 put towards highway safety patrols. So we'll pretty much fund what we're doing right now, especially with this special, traffic enforcement unit we formed. It would fund these patrols, for overtime and that sort of thing. So we're hoping to get that, and it would just add to the pot that, we're already spending money on and resources. If we can get this $10,000 grant, and I'll let you know how that goes in hopefully the next week or so. If anyone has any questions or complaints, I'd be glad to try to address those.
I was curious about downtown Great Barrington, because I know there's been a lot of concern about particularly the crosswalks and people not stopping. And, some suggestions I've heard from citizens is, some kind of a flashing mechanism that you push and it flashes, or, different kind of mechanisms that would help. And I'm just wondering, when it comes to, the time that officers are spending standing at crosswalks, that you could be out doing other things versus the money that we could spend to do some kind of flashing mechanism. Has there ever been a comparison about that, or is that something that...
Chief John is behind you, I think he's gonna bail you out on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we hired EDM to do a traffic safety analysis of Main Street, including all those crosswalks. They started that, so we expect to have some preliminary ideas of ways to improve Main Street in the spring.
Does that answer the question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you could go to the microphone and state your name.
Krysia Kurzyca, 18 Roosevelt Street. My question is, where do I get the traffic control complaint forms?
Yeah, it's right on the police department website. Yeah, it's pretty prominent, so we made it easy to get to, and just get it back to me somehow, whatever is easiest for you, and we do follow up and let people know exactly how we handle their complaint. And like I said, sometimes they just want the speed trailer, and we get that up there, but anything that's in the realm of traffic enforcement, please let us know.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
That's a hard act to follow. So I wanted to give everybody a brief update about the marijuana revenue. I know there's been a lot of talk around the revenue and how it can be used. So I wanted to kind of give some clarification and hopefully kind of go through the process. I'm so sorry, Sue Carmel, Finance Director. At the annual town meeting in May of 2018, the town adopted the law allowing the town to collect the 3% options tax on the sale of recreational marijuana. As everyone is aware, our first retail establishment opened in January of 2019. During the second half of the fiscal year, fiscal 2019, which would have been January to June 30th, we received approximately $271,000 from the state. In accordance with the Department of Revenue, this money is considered general fund revenue, and it's what is labeled as local receipts. Very similar to departmental revenue, such as licenses and permits, birth certificates, the local option taxes for the meals, and the hotel and motel revenue. All of the general fund revenue must close out to free cash at the end of the fiscal year. So therefore, that $271,000 that we collected will end up being utilized during the fiscal 2021 budget process in the spring. Money that we are currently taking in during this fiscal year, again, will go through the same process next year, close on June 30th of 2020, and will be available for the fiscal 2022 budget process. That's my update. I'm happy to take any questions.
There are a lot of people who think that the marijuana revenues will be specially earmarked so that we can take a vote on what we want to do. And I've repeated what Ed has said, which is, goes into general funds. Is it possible for us to get the last couple of years' revenues from these sources like restaurants, hotels, and so forth? That's not usually provided in the budget process that I recall unless you ask for it, but it would be very helpful for people to understand where this money is coming from, what goes to the general funds, so that we can see what the offsets are to our costs.
Chairman, I've asked either for the finance committee or select board meeting to have that discussion, so we will do that.
Great.
Because I think it will. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
I guess I do have something else.
Okay, hold on.
Is it still on?
No,
Sorry, Sue, you were on your way out. So the number that you're talking about specifically is the state and not the community impact fees.
That is correct.
So those community impact fees, I'm assuming when we're working them in, it would be the same what we receive in FY19 would be used in an FY21 budget. And the
Absolutely.
same with the FY20 and then the 22, and that isn't necessarily general fund, or is that general fund as well?
That is general fund as well, but there are more restrictions placed on the use of that money.
Right.
And one of the things I
Right.
didn't state was when it does roll into free cash, it is required to have a vote at town meeting to use any money out of free cash. So it would be brought forward before town meeting.
Okay, so I guess my question is, because that is a little bit more, I mean, I realize it's not earmarked in any way, that's like probably more of a technical term, but it does have, the community impact fee has a kind of specific goal in mind, which is offsetting the impact of marijuana in our community. Is there, I mean, I'm wondering the best way for, whether it's the board or the budget process or some way for us to have input on how that is being allocated. I don't know if I'm being clear.
I think that conversation will play out during the budget process, but we're just not quite there yet. But, you know, I think we'll have an in-depth conversation about how to use the general fund revenue and the community impact fees separately during that, in the next couple of months.
Okay.
Do you have any more to add to that, Sue?
No.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Sean Mann, News and Public Works Director. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of projects that are happening and that the town manager asked me to touch on. And I guess we'll start with the wastewater upgrade because we just talked about the sewer rates. And that large capital number is a project to deal with the effluent phosphorus and nitrogen that comes out of our plant. And it goes into the Housatonic River and then it leads into the Long Island Sound. So DEP has given us a permit and the permit has a certain number of the amount of those nutrients we can release, and we have to meet it within a certain amount of years. So we have a mandate from DEP, and we're going to have to move forward with that project probably in the next year or two. So I don't know if you guys have any questions about it. So the next project I'll discuss, we just finished last week paving Lake Mansfield Road, as you might have heard. We're moving forward to turn it into a one-way as quick as we can. We ordered some signs today, and Foresight has come up with a traffic plan to make it a one-way. So hopefully we'll get that done the next week or two, barring an early onset of winter. The next project I'll touch upon, the West Sheffield Road, we had to reduce to one lane because of a bank failure. So we've one-laned it with some Jersey barriers and put some stop signs on each side. So if you drive on the road, you will notice it's safe to pass, but it's a little bit narrower than it was before, so please be careful. Additionally, a culvert has collapsed on East Sheffield Road, which we will need to do an emergency repair on in the next week to two, obviously fighting winter. So there will be a closure there for a day or two while we address that culvert. the emergency repair of that culvert, and then seek funds in the long term to do a more permanent repair. The Ramsdale Designer Selection Committee has chosen LLB Architects to be the architects to create a design to make Ramsdale Library ADA accessible. So we're moving forward with actually in the contract with them in the next week or two to come up with a full design to make Ramsdale Library ADA accessible. Additionally, Ty and Bond is working on the alternatives analysis for Division Street Bridge, which is the sort of preliminary engineering to figure out what the town is going to do long-term there. It'll have several factors that it'll take in consideration in terms of a full bridge design. We could be doing a temporary bridge, we could be doing a bridge in a different footprint, we could be doing a demo and a new bridge in the same place, or it could be a very substantial repair to the bridge. There's going to be substantial amounts of permitting associated with any work we do there through both DEP and through the Mass DOT. So they'll complete the alternatives analysis sometime in the spring, and we'll be coming forward with the board to ask for recommendation about next steps at that time. So,
Which bridge?
Division Street Bridge,
Thank you.
sorry. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that. I know I get calls about it every day, so.
I
Go
just
ahead.
was wondering about the Brown Bridge.
Sure. I'm gonna touch upon that in a minute. Actually, we can transition right into that now. So, I did talk to Mass DOT about a month ago, and they informed me that they're gonna be doing a pretty substantial project in the Brown Bridge next spring. It'll be putting about 20,000 pounds of new steel underneath the bridge, as well as some lead remediation, paint, and some work on the railings on the side. The work is expected to take between 9 months and a year. So it will have a significant impact in town, and we're waiting currently for the traffic plan. Both myself and the fire chief have requested the traffic plan from Mass DOT just to see what we're gonna be dealing with.
So possibly it might be one way, possibly it might be closed for a time, or
So, I
that's
mean,
all?
yeah, I mean, so, again, I've requested that info from their engineer, and as soon as I have more information, I'll definitely let everyone know.
The design advisory committee met at 5 o'clock. I don't know what their decision was to pick a color for the Brown Bridge.
Good memory.
Right.
I think brown was a consideration.
Ross, pick the color.
Right.
Can you go up to the microphone?
Several things. Dan Kaczynski, Taft Farms. Several questions. What is the most optimistic time frame for any kind of access across that river?
So the permitting will be at least a year, and if we were to move forward with a temporary bridge, we have to demo the bridge that's there, which also requires design, and throw a new bridge up, so you're looking at 2 to 3 years minimum.
I'll be out of business.
I'm really sorry.
You're really sorry.
I am sorry.
Okay. Truth of the matter is, I've offered the board here, I'll offer it to you publicly again. You can use my land on the other side for access for a downstream temporary bridge. It doesn't have to be a 60-mile-an-hour bridge to cross the river. Okay? It can be an S-curve. It might be better, in fact, in terms of the people who live in the neighborhood, because especially late night, we get some high speed, or we used to anyway, get some high speed people coming down through. By the way, something for you, Chief Walsh, too. Can you notify the state police that that bridge is closed? Because day before yesterday, we had a cruiser, state police, on call apparently, take the corner on Division Street by the farm, head on down the street, and have to wheel around, head right on back up, and go through Housatonic. So, just let them know that that bridge is closed. Despite the signs that Sean's put up, and more were put up today, I don't know what, people do not read.
Yeah, I know.
They don't read. Is this a statement on where our newspapers are today or whatever, but they just don't know how to read anymore. Look, that bridge is killing us. I mean, and the thing that, I don't know how the board feels about it, but when summer comes and they close down even one lane on that Brown Bridge, if you're coming through with a 53-footer, where do you go? Through Domaney's? You know, we've got a real problem there, Houston. And I'll tell you, I don't want to be in your position to try and decide where it is, but I want you to consider where our position is.
Yeah, so as far as the Brown Bridge, that's up to Mass DOT to figure out how they're gonna deal with that, and I don't have any control over it. I certainly will make sure that everyone's voices are heard. In terms of a downstream crossing to put a temporary bridge up, that portion of the river is a natural heritage site. There's endangered species. There's no way they're gonna let us put any sort of temporary bridge outside that existing footprint. Even if they did, the permitting would be identical to what we're doing right now to replace the bridge where it exists. But I do want to apologize to you for the impact it's having on your business. I can tell you that when I started here, I knew that bridge was a problem, and I did everything I could to get funding as fast as I could. So I do apologize, and I'm sorry, but it's going to be a little while longer, and I really hope everyone can be patient.
We have already, several people here, I know Mark is aware that for several years I've been coming, and I've also said it to your predecessor, let me know when that bridge is gonna close so I can make alternative arrangements on the field. And that hasn't been the issue. I think the issue was the suddenness with the way the state closed it down. More than one person in the neighborhood has asked the question whether or not the state inspection of a year ago was a desk job, because nobody saw them there. But that was the one where they lowered it by one notch, and then they come in this year and all of a sudden it's deteriorated to the point where you have to worry about whether or not you can cross it on a bicycle. I don't know what else to say except after the 48-49 flood, which I remember, I'm old enough to remember, they did put a Bailey Bridge downstream from where this bridge is located now. And the other bridge was located further upstream. The federal waterway that you referred to as this, was that part of the Great Rivers Act in the 50s?
It's endangered species.
No, I don't
It's a
think.
natural heritage site.
Well, yeah, so is everything. But what is the most optimistic time frame for any kind of vehicle crossing of that river?
So as I said, I gave you a preliminary guess, but when the alternatives analysis is complete this spring, Time Bond will be able to lay out all that stuff for us, including the length of permitting and the length of construction, even for temporary repairs to the deck. So everything will be laid out come spring. And we've started the permitting through the National Heritage already, hoping that we can streamline the process to go as fast as we can.
Can we, quite frankly to the board, can we call in any favors from politicians we know to speed this thing up?
Yeah, we'll go as fast as we can.
I mean, we're talking, Washington or Boston or wherever. I mean, Washington's got other things on its mind right now, but.
We need to move ahead.
All right, there you go.
You have anything else?
Yeah, the last project is another, the TOT project, which is that they were scheduled, sorry.
Michelle, is it on Division Street?
Yes, it is.
Very.
I just want to say, I grew up on Division Street, about the Division Street Bridge. I'm doing a lot of research on the Nolan gravel bed area. In my research, 1989, there was a document that stated, and I shared this document with the press, I sent it by email, that said no loaded trucks were supposed to go over the Division Street Bridge due to the load postings on the bridge, which were the same then as they are today. My question is, then, this being said, why did the town of Great Barrington detour large trucks from North Plain Road over the bridge? Now we have a zero load rating, we have a closed bridge, and everybody is acting like this is a big surprise. My deceased mother, over the years, would go to me, that bridge is going to go down. You should see the trucks going over it. Now, we're not talking about a pickup truck. We're talking about a huge truck with a Caterpillar excavator on the back of it going over that bridge. I have videos of loaded gravel trucks crossing that bridge with school buses. And now we're sitting here tonight, like, what happened? Why is this done? And I'm really getting angry because I've brought this up before the town of Great Barrington regarding the trucks going over the bridge. And again, I shared the paperwork with the press. They have it. And so this is 1989, and today it's 2019. So I think we had a lot of notice. And I feel bad for Taft Farms. I love Taft Farms. But I would feel even worse for a parent whose child was killed if that bridge collapsed when the school bus went in the river. Thank you.
So the last project I was going to touch upon is another Mass DOT project, which is the paving of Route 23, Lincoln Town. They had begun the preliminary work to mill and pave that. The weather has shut them down, but if it gets warmer, I expect that they would pave that road the next week and a half, but there's a chance it might be delayed until the spring.
Moving ahead, continuation, approval of the revised